thank you so much for your sharing of your wisdom.
Thank you. Where are you? Okay, thanks. Where are my glasses? Okay, thank you. You're over there. Thank you.
You know, when I read your book, Caravan of Despair, I, having been with Ram Dass many, many times, was just felt so happy that you had this incredible youth experience with these teachers and that you brought it to us. And I thank you for that. And I just can't say enough about that memoir. It's really, I've had my own losses, significant, and it was very, very helpful to me in healing. And I thank you for bringing that wisdom to all of us. And I have a comment, and I'm not sure that what you can say about it even, but I feel it's worth saying. What you said about the broken heart has the boundless capacity for love. And I know that. And I also know, being a mental health clinician, it has a boundless capacity for mental illness, for shutting down, for isolation, for hate, for creating hurt. And I struggle with that too.
Yeah. Right, because saying to someone who is grieving, it's okay, just show up for this experience, just be present for your brokenness, and that will open up the space to be able to hold the impossible. It's a privilege to be able to say such a thing to someone who has been stripped of all such privileges, to choose what to feel. It's difficult as a mental health practitioner or even just a spiritual friend, an anamkara, to be able to say to someone who's grieving, just breathe into it, dude. It'll be okay. It's like, how did I know to do that? I don't know, but I try to model that for people. Like, the way I got started on this whole commitment to unpacking white privilege is by being totally humiliated and shamed. And I'll just tell you the story very briefly, and you can read it online. I wrote an essay called My White Shadow that you can find, because it kind of went viral for a while. And it was about this experience. I'll just distill it to its essence, which is that I was in a kind of social change institute where I was being brought in as an elder to kind of, as a guide. And that was completely unraveled within the first few hours when I was confronted not by one, but by two different young men, a man from India and a man from Colombia. The man from India said, "Why are you wearing that top? That's Indian, right? That's from India." And I said, "Yes, and I'm wearing it because it's beautiful, and someone gave it to me." And he said, "So what makes you think that you can wear our ethnic clothing? Like, do you have some connection to, are you Indian?" But he actually didn't say it that nicely. He said he was escalating, getting very angry, and basically yelling at me about appropriating Indian clothing. And then not 5 minutes later, I greeted a man in Spanish who I happen to know is from Colombia from the night before on the panel that he was on. And I greeted him in Spanish, "Buenos días, ¿cómo está?" And he became very angry because it's like, we were in Canada, why was I speaking to him in Spanish? Is that my language? Well, no, actually, it's not. It's my second language. I've been speaking Spanish since I was a child, but no, it's not my native tongue, my mother tongue. And so why do you think that you can just speak to me? Thank you. He said, "We're in Canada," which is where we were, and we have to, those of us who are Latinos or from any other country, have to speak the language of the land in order to get by. We don't have the privilege of speaking a language because we think it's pretty, or wearing these clothes because, we think they're nice. So they weren't skillful in the way they spoke to me. It was very mean and hurtful. But something in me knew not to run away. not to defend myself, and not to, grovel, but to just listen, to shut the fuck up for once in my life and take it in and listen. That same impulse to pay attention and yield and soften and not know was the impulse I had when Jenny died. Like, I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear the next breath for a long time. And yet, something in me knew that I could not know, and that therefore I could only surrender. And it wasn't like, okay, I'll surrender and then it'll be okay. It was the only thing I could do, and in that surrendering, my capacity to bear the unbearable opened. How do we give that to each other? I don't know, except by trying to model it. And modeling it means messing up too, and not always being skillful. Yesterday I made several mistakes with people in this room of, being ungracious. And, if we take refuge in the Buddha as woman, it's going to look like someone who can't bear the unbearable sometimes, and who gets tired and grouchy, and yet we keep showing up. Thank you for your question, and I hope you will excuse my long-winded answer. I'll try to be more distilled now.
Mirabai, where can we find that first Buddha Sattva prayer that you shared?
Shanti Deva, that one, the very first one I read.
The first one.
Shanti Deva, around 700 CE. So if you Google that, you'll find it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for your comments on white superiority. I was feeling guilty that I was here this weekend because I'm supposed to be this very day at a conference in Northern Illinois, United Methodist Conference.
Wow.
I'm lay leader of my church. There's a laity conference today on addressing racism.
Wow.
And I feel like your comments put me there.
Oh, thank you. Where
So,
are you? Raise
I'm
your hand.
here.
There you go. Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that.
Because now I have something to take back, and now I can listen to what they had to say, even though I was not physically present. And thank you for your comments.
Oh,
Because I also go every summer to Chautauqua Institution in New York State, which is the original Chautauqua,
yeah.
and it's all white, but not all white. I'm sorry. There are some people of color who do attend, but we're constantly grappling with how do we bring people of diverse everything to this institution, and it's not an easy thing to do.
We'll do it with each other, and we will, cultivate that ground so that then some real dialogue is possible. I'm going to be at Chautauqua in July, I think, in New York, in celebration of 100 years of women having the vote.
I thank you for the invitation instead of the expectation that in our time together we would make another vow after being here this weekend. And for the practice of seeing ourselves embraced by Divine Mother. I'm also here to make a confession that even as a child, those practices for the one I follow, which has been the Christ, has been an image of a white guy with blue eyes and this gorgeous wavy hair. Such that when I looked at the nativity scene, I would see Jesus' beautiful mother with beautiful skin and blue eyes and long brown hair, to where I would almost envy that and try to seek to have that be the image I have of this divineness. Yeah. So the practice that we just did, and then your follow-up on white privilege, made me realize that even in this room, standing here with this practice, I was embraced by a divine mother with white image. And I wonder if one of those things we can do to bring about this harmony is to accept an invitation in that practice to be embraced in the arms of color. And then have the invitation present for us to apologize to Divine Mother for those assumptions that Divine Mother embraces me in my likeness. So it was a wonderful moment to say, oh my goodness, I am sorry that I struggle. I admit my struggle to be embraced in that Divine Mother of color. I don't know if that helps. But
It's so beautiful, and I have to tell you something. So there is a young African-American public theologian named Christina Cleveland. Do you guys know about her? Do you all know about her? Christina Cleveland, Christina with an E, Chrisistena, Cleveland, who is in the process of writing a book called Christ, Our Black Mother, and has recently done a collaboration with an artist of Christina's writings and quotes from other wisdom figures and these gorgeous images of the Madonna and the Christ as people of color. And it's an online, right now, I mean, she's writing a book, but right now it's this beautiful online book. So look her up, Christina Cleveland, and you will see if you go right to her page, it'll be right there. And I see someone knows who I'm talking about. Raise your hand if you know who Christina Cleveland is and about her work with Christ, the Black Mother. Yay! Okay.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. There is a book called Witnessing Whiteness that congregations are putting on courses or through the YWCA about white privilege.
Great.
But my observation that may end up in a question is, we've seen shifts of paradigms in religion from original sin, original blessing, to now a more heart center. Everything is for our evolution. Everything is good. God is in all, meaning there is no good or bad. And, my question is, if we are incarnating until we're all awakened, that shows progression that is happening. But there seems an issue with remembrance. You know, we incarnate, and then I look around at the age here, and we are between 60 and 80, realizing, oh, we're already awakened, and now our minds are awakened, and now it's time for our hearts to awaken, which suggests to me, how do we change that conditioning so that we carry from one lifetime to another our real goal, which is heart awakening, from age 3. We're energetic lights of being in emotionally sensitive bodies, carrying the pain of community. And Dark Night of the Soul may be one imprint or a way to change, or this community may be another that we, as we go through lifetime to lifetime, we can bring it and continue this journey, because I imagine many of us have been previously awakened in another lifetime, and here we are.
Yeah, even if you don't believe in the transmigration of souls, or otherwise known as reincarnation, how do we remember all the lifetimes that are embedded in this very one life that we remember or know, or maybe our only life, who knows, I don't know. But how do we continue, how do we follow the trajectory of the heart rather than some kind of idea of what enlightenment looks like, and continually remind ourselves to open when everything is inviting us to shut down and protect ourselves against what's coming at us. The only thing I know to do is to give it to her. Just keep giving it to her. Or sister or lover, whoever she may be to us, right now, my mind is just spinning and I don't know what to do. And I can't figure it out and I can't fix this, and I just try to give it over. You do it, you take it. I can't do this alone. I know that sounds so simplistic, but it really works for me to remember. In Sufism, which is of course the mystical branch of Islam, the single most important word is remember. Remembrance. And remember what? Remember to return to the heart. Remember that God is love. So thank you for your reflections.
I'm sensing such beautiful, soulful images and feelings from you as you've spoken yesterday and today, so thank you for that. I have a very basic question. I don't know what it means to be awakened. I read about it, I aim for it, but then what is it?
Yeah. I don't think my answer is going to get the same applause, which is, I don't know.
Thank you so much for this day and yesterday, and for bringing up the white privilege. My daughter, and for those of you who are local, the Valencia has a Peace and Justice Institute that is addressing this on a major scale.
Great.
And I remember one time driving down the road and saying, I'm not prejudiced. And Rachel, with her 12 years of study with this, and said, Mom, we're all prejudiced. We all have some of it in us, and it is white privilege that I didn't know about. So I just want to thank you so much. A friend and I were discussing this yesterday about, look, there's not a single person of color in this room. And it's concerning. All right. Okay. It's very concerning, and I just love what you've said about it. And if you look it up online, Peace and Justice Institute of Valencia, and they do an amazing work.
Thank you. Just quickly, a podcast, for those of you who like podcasts, that I found that I absolutely love about this. It comes out of Duke University, and it's called, the podcast is called Scene on Radio, SCENE, Scene on Radio, and it's each season is a different theme, and there's a season called Seeing White, and it is excellent, very engaging. There's a lot of literature being written right now, so you can read a ton of stuff, but this, if you want to listen to a podcast, it's just fabulous. Scene on Radio is the podcast, Seeing White is the season. It's like 12 episodes.
And I think we only have time for 2 more questions.
Really? What? 2 or 3. I thought we had till 11:30.
Thank you so much, Mirabai. Everything is wonderful. I'm a social worker and a psychotherapist, but before that, I'm a human being having a spiritual experience, right? Above all. And I just want to thank you for acknowledging what's going on here with the whiteness. Okay? And I think it could start with gladdening light. And I say this lovingly, that why not add some diversity to the panels? Why not just begin there? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Thank you.
I should like to make a comment. Actually, I was going to speak about what the previous speaker said. I think you mentioned about beginning and how we should begin encompassing people of color. And I do believe strongly that it could start with the panelists, the speakers, the presenters, and that's where it could have the beginning. I would love to hear a Hindu speak about Buddhism, for example, rather than someone else. But to me, I noticed that this is the first time I've attended, and I noticed right away there were no people of color, none. And Oh, there's one. I don't know where he is. Welcome. Bienvenido. Anyway, I find that rather disheartening. I come from South Florida, where we have a really huge diversity of people of color, and that's one of the things I like about living there in South Florida. And it's hard to see it here. And I've tried to follow a spiritual path for a long, long time in my life, and I've heard a lot of the same things, which is a good thing, to hear things over and over again. But that's my comment. I mainly would like to see somebody in the panel, or more than somebody, present.
Thank you so much.
I never heard the name Martin Luther King today. I heard a lot of other names, but he's one of my heroes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mentioned him yesterday with the web of mutuality, but anyway, I hear you. So there are a lot of hands up. So I think this white privilege thing might be stirring up some stuff.
Can I? As long as I have the microphone,
Yeah.
and as long as you've opened the topic,
Try to keep it very distilled if you can, so we can get one more in, if you don't mind.
Okay, very quickly. I would hope that while you're considering opening up to discussing your white privilege, that you would look to this room, to this event, and look at opening up to the discussion of your Christian privilege. As a non-Christian in this room, I don't necessarily feel very welcome in the way that the sessions were opened up, and while Rami and Mirabai are examples of diversity, this room and some of the things done here are not.
Thank you very much. Yeah, as a Jewish person, you just sort of get used to translating in your head. I wonder if that's similar for people of color in white spaces. It's like, okay, this is the default language of the realm, and I'll just turn it into what makes sense to me. But I hear you, Frank. That's important. Okay, quickly, briefly.
Thank you so much. I'm one of a few people of color. Privileged to be here, and to hear different perspectives. But I would like to hear your perspective on reaching out to people, others, individually, and seeing people who are different from us, and putting yourself in different spaces to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
How have you done that?
Yeah. So I do that as a matter of course now, which means I'm uncomfortable a great deal of the time, because it's not like I go in. So I do reach out to other spaces and other communities, and it's not like I go expecting praise for being a white person who's extending myself. I am always awkward. I almost always say the wrong thing, like things that embarrass me, and it's messy. So what I want to say to other white people, which is 99% of you in this room, is that I'm not talking about like charging forth and expanding, our consciousness and getting it right. There is what I have, in my experience, maybe it's just because I'm awkward, but I have never found that when I enter into spaces that are dominated by people of color and ask to be there and speak about these things and try to cultivate my white ally-ness, that I do it, including right now, in any kind of skillful manner, because I don't really know how, no matter how many books I read about white privilege and white fragility and all of these kind of teachings about waking up to the dominance of white supremacy in the culture at large, that I know how to do it. So I guess what I try to do is stop talking so much and listen more. I try to acknowledge that the color difference and not pretend that it's not there. Like a lot of white people, or conditioned, liberal, good, well-meaning white people, that I don't see color. So I've really worked on overcoming that conditioning and actually asking. So often if there's a space like this and there are 2 or 3 black people or people of color, it's usually black people, sometimes Latinos, asking them, what is it like for you? Like, how is this for you? Check in with the people of color and not pretend that they're not sitting there in the sea of white. I don't know how else to answer your question, but I appreciate the question. My response is I don't know how to do it, but I'm trying anyway, and I'm not expecting congratulations from the people of color for doing what's right in an often unskillful way.
Okay, we'll leave this as the last question. Thank you.
One more question in a different direction now. Richard Rohr talks a lot about the cosmic Christ.
Thank you.
Talks about the cosmic Christ. Can you speak a little bit about how you see the cosmic Christ and the feminine wisdom, how those relate, do not relate, just to speak to that a little bit?
That's not a brief question. Richard Rohr is a privileged white dude, and he'd be the first one to admit it. And he uses patriarchal language because that's the default, dialect that he's inherited. But here's how I'll say it. And I said it yesterday, that if the Christ is the incarnation of love in form, that is the essence of the feminine. That is the sacred feminine, is spirit pouring into matter and rendering everything holy. That's the cosmic Christ, and she is she.